What's up, guys? In this video, I'll be teaching you your first project, which is a really simple four-function calculator. Now let's get started. So first, as always, we're going to be including IOStream, using namespace std. So first, we'll define our main function. So that is main. Okay. So what we want to do first is give the user idea about what's going on. So we would actually put something like a greeting, like welcome to, or how about we just do for function calculator. Then that's it, and then you want to put a new line. So what we want to do now is give the user some options. So addition, subtraction, division, and etc. Multiplication. This we could put, so how about one is addition, and we want a new line. And next is how about subtraction, new line. Now we would do multiplication, then division. Okay, now that I've done this, you can also see I've created a string user option, so we also want to include string. And we could put string. Now that we put a string, this should be good. Then now actually we can put out hashes. Nice. Now what we want to do is some input. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is to get the input. So I think I've told you this in the last video or previous videos. To do that, we would use C input, then we would use the greater than symbol. And since we declared a variable user option, we can store their entered number in here. Now we can do this. Now we are going to do this. So if we're going to use if statement, so if user option is equal to 1, you know what? We could actually change this to an integer because they're going to be entering number like 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to change this to integer. You can actually remove this library or decide to keep it. Doesn't really matter. By the way, up here you can actually choose to do this if you want. I just did this for fun. Okay, now that we did that, we could put user option. If user option is equal to 1, we could actually ask them to enter their first number, so we could put something like number 1, or if you really want to get a mathematical, add in 1, but that would actually be our variable name. So for now, you can put number 1, and then here we're going to create some variables. So probably we'd want an integer, and then we could put it as addend number 1 and addend number 2. once we do this, we can actually input addend 1. Then we could put number 2. We would store this, take the input and store this in a variable addend 2, which we previously declared up here. Okay, now we will display sum, or we can put total. I think sum should be fine. Sum is equal to, and then we will use another two less than symbols to display addend 1 plus addend 2. So this is basically addend 1 plus addend 2. Now, this actually works because we're using the plus operator. So if I actually entered number 1 as 5, it would store the variable addend 1 as 5. And if I put addend number 2 as say 3, we'll store addend 2 as 3. What this basically does here, this statement, so it outputs sum, then it puts addend 1, which is 5, plus addend 2, which equals 3, and it would display sum and then display 8. So 5 plus 3 is 8. So far what we've done, let's actually test it. So, we forgot to add a new line after here. Some common beginner mistakes. Okay, now what we want to do is addition. We would do 1, because so far we've only done 1. Then number 1 would be, say, let's do 12. And then number 2 would be 5. The sum is 17. So this is how it works. So now let's create another if statement. So if user option is equal to 2, well, then I can place my block of code there. Okay, so if you see what I've done here, I put if user option equals 2, then create two variables, the minuend and subtrahend. So for those of you who don't know what minuend and subtrahend is, I understand if you're not familiar with it, but say there's like a simple division, so 5 minus 3. So the minuend here would be 5 and the subtrahend would be 3. Subtrahend is basically what's taken away from what like the person has, which is the minuend. So that's that. And it asks for number 1, takes the input, number 2 takes the input, gives the difference, and this time it's minuend minus the subtrahend, so we can also test this out. I think you guys are getting this by now, so like you can understand what's happening. So if I say 50 minus 3, this should be 7, and that's good. Now that we've done that, we can create another statement for multiplication and then division. So it's basically really the same thing. It's just like the switch of operators. Okay guys, I have finished the rest of the program. So if user option equals 3, number 1 takes in factor 1, factor 2, and it displays a product. As you can see, it's just a change of the operators being used. So here it's division modulus. Oh, this one for I made it so it displays a quotient and remainder. And this is how it is. And this is pretty much the program. I can also tell you some modifications I'm going to show you right now. So if you just want to know a simple calculator, like this is it, but I'm also going to show you some advanced modifications we could make, but not really advanced, but we'll still make them. So first one, what we're going to do is to make it so that the user has the option of actually making another calculation or exiting. So we would want to make a separate function called not really anything, but I'm gonna make a void, which literally means nothing and returns no value. What I mean by returns no value is, you know how in integers we put return and then 0? Void, it doesn't return, so you can just put something like return and then that's it. Here what we are going to do is create a new one. So we are going to ask the user, so we are going to prompt the user. But before that, I will name this prompt. And we can do one new calculation and then new input to exit. Then you put something new. So now we also want to create a variable. So again, integer, and then we can name it user choice. Then we could actually get the user input, so user choice. So we're gonna store the user's input in here, and now is where the action comes in. So another if, so if user choice equals 1, we will call the main function again. So we will call main. So what is main exactly? I told you about this function named main, which is predefined, so the compiler will look for this. So once we made this, if I put main, so if the user choice is 1, it will go back, it will return control to main, and then it would display the options, take user input, and yeah, so on. Okay. On the other hand, I will be putting else. So else if user voice is actually equal to 2, what we will do is we will actually return. We will return, which means it will basically exit. Another something else you could do is actually like just putting exit, and then we could put 0. So like you can also see here void exit, and then we'll put the status, which is 0. That means nothing wrong is there. Okay, now let's actually see if this works. And before we do that, we also want to put else. So if the user decides to enter something else, we want to do something different, which is how about it will display invalid choice. And then to do that, we could actually return control. So what we're going to do is actually create another function. This time we will put control. Or how about because if we do prompt again, it won't really work. So we want to, okay, so we can just name it return control. Okay. Right now what we're going to do is actually pretty simple. We will basically call prompt again. So P or prompt. Now, so it will, so else it will say invalid choice, and then it will go to return control. So okay. Now, once we go to return control, if it goes to return control, it will actually say prompt. Then it will do this again. Okay, so now what I've actually done here is I've actually declared the functions again, so that because if you actually saw here, there was an error return control. It said that because it didn't know that function. And it also didn't know that function because we actually defined return control after this function. So since we declared it in or right here, it should work properly. Now all we have to do is call prompt. So now we are going to call this function prompt. Okay. Least. And yes, this should work. Now let's actually run it. So let's do something like multiplication, number 1, 45 times 32, product. This, oh, it's 1,400, 1,440. Okay, now what we also need to do is in prompt, we need to actually put /n, so for a new line, because here we can see we have to define a new line and the user may get mixed up with the calculations. So let's try again. So let's do multiplication, 45, 32. Okay, product 1,440. So if we do, say, let's do something like 3. It would say invalid choice, 1 new calculation, to exit. I want to do a new calculation. You can see here it does the list. Then we do this, something like this. And it's basically a large loop, and if we click exit, it will work. So this is pretty much what it is. Also, we can also do list, count, and line. We can do this. So if we do multiplication, actually this time let's actually do something like division. So we can do this now that it's actually evenly lined up. So, and I think this is the end of our calculator tutorial, and next video we will be learning more concepts about C++, and then we will basically be learning in depth. And please note, these are like, you might not be comfortable with this because you haven't learned functions yet, which will be in the next video. But keep learning. But the main point of this video was like how to create a basic calculator, and I hope this video really helped. And this is it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye, folks.